Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I'm your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got a gentleman named Adam. Adam, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Tom. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us info at realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. All right, Adam. So, you have a book called The Most Human, right?
I certainly do. And I just happen to have a copy right here, Tom. Look at
There it
that.
is. The cover should probably look familiar for people that are, I don't know, what would you say age range?
Oh man, it crosses generations now. I mean, I got a Star Trek conventions. There are kids there in cosplay. A
Yeah.
lot of people know who Spock is. He's just part of the pop culture consciousness. Um,
So,
but it's a show from the '60s. That's when it first went on the air. When I was a kid, I'm 68, but it keeps on going. It resonates with people even today, even young people today, because it has such a positive message.
yeah. So, for those of you that are trying to figure out what we're even talking about, Adam is actually Mr. Spock's son, which is pretty fascinating and inspired you to write the book. Basically, what inspired you to write the book, and kind of give us a little bit of the back history of kind of how this came to be.
Well, the subtitle is Reconciling with My Father, Leonard Nimoy. The book is the story of my difficult, complicated relationship with my dad, and how 12-step recovery helped us figure out some of our problems. My dad and I, it was a very interesting life growing up the son of Leonard Nimoy, the son of Spock, because it was this weird combination of these incredible experiences. My dad was so successful and so recognizable and did so many things in his life. I mean, he was a very ambitious man and managed to accomplish a lot. And the family, we really enjoyed a lot of the fruits of that success. Many great experiences with my dad, but it was coupled with really difficult conflict with him, a lot of verbal conflict with him, which was, started when we didn't have a very close relationship when I was a kid. And then when I started using, at age 17, and my dad became a full-on admitted alcoholic, things just got worse from there. And it was really 30 years of, intermittent great experiences with him, coupled with periodic and regular episodes of really unpleasant, verbal warfare. And my dad went sober in the 1990s, but he wasn't really working a program, And although alcohol was not a part of the equation, we were still not, banging heads pretty hard. It wasn't until I went into recovery around 2004 and that I finally made an amends to him in 2006 with the help of a lot of tools of recovery and my friends in recovery, that my dad and I finally figured out how to reconcile with one another. And I had a very close and loving relationship with him the last 7 years of his life, all due to 12-step recovery.
Wow. We don't talk about that a lot, honestly, in 12 step. Oftentimes when people hear families reconciling and stuff, they automatically think, well, somebody went to Al-Anon, right?
Well, I am a double winner. I mean, Al-Anon, yeah, I mean, as soon as I went into recovery, I was going into Al-Anon. And I shared this story with my dad in Al-Anon meetings and in AA meetings anonymously. Those people don't know I'm related to Leonard Nimoy. They don't need to know. It's just a father and son story, and it resonates with people. People will come up to me after the meeting and say, "Yeah, I'm going to call my dad or my mom tonight. I haven't talked to them in quite some time." It gives them hope that there is a solution to their difficulty. I mean, in my case, I was lucky that my dad was ready to let go of the resentments he had towards me, as I was ready to let go of mine towards him. I mean, resentment is a big part of the equation. And it was because it was resonating with people in these 12-step meetings I was going to that I decided I should just do the deep dive and write the book and go into great detail about how it all worked out for the two of us. Because I mean, Tom, I tell you in the beginning, my dad and I, we were doomed from the beginning. There was just no way we were going to ever figure it out. My dad came from the Great Depression era generation, the self-made man, and these people were not, his parents were not touchy-feely, warm and fuzzy, and neither was my dad. And then I'm living with Mr. Spock, and he's really not warm and fuzzy, touchy-feely. I got this double whammy I'm dealing with. So my dad and I never would have figured it out without the tools of recovery.
Why? I mean, looking back on it now, and I don't know how in detail you want to go in this, if any, but what resentments did he have towards you? And like what did they stem from?
Well, a lot of it was pretty complicated. Some of it had to do with the fact that his parents, my dad had to work for everything that he had. He came to LA at age 18. My dad was born and raised in Boston. His parents were Ukrainian immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't, they struggled, during the Depression. They didn't have anything really. And when my dad said he wanted to become an actor and go to Hollywood, my grandparents were just devastated. They wanted him to go to college and become a doctor or a lawyer. So they never gave him anything, no support whatsoever. And he came to LA and had to hustle, to support himself. And then that was 49. In 1956, I came along. My sister, showed up in 55, and he was supporting a family of four. So there was always this struggle of just generating cash. Now, when my dad was 10, he was selling newspapers on the Boston Common in the middle of winter. When I was 10, Star Trek went on the air and things started to get a little more comfortable around our household. And I was doing things like watching 60s TV and reading Spider-Man comic books and listening to the Beatles, And my dad, that just didn't quite fit into his worldview. So that was a problem. And then there was a lot of competition with my dad because I did well academically. I managed to get into UC Berkeley, and I went to Loyola Law School, and my dad had no formal schooling. And on the one hand, he was proud of the academic work I was doing. On the other hand, he was flat out jealous that was something that he couldn't do. And there was a little bit of a competitive element there. So it was that kind of stuff that, that started it. And just that he just didn't, the other thing was he just didn't have the tools to deal with issues that were coming up. He was just not, sometimes things went well. It wasn't always, it's always a gray area. It's never black and white. Sometimes he was very helpful to me. When I transitioned out of the law into directing TV, my dad was very, very helpful to me. But when we had a difference of opinion, it was just brutal with him. And we could never find any reconciliation. He was not, we got this from my mother, thankfully. My dad was just not the supportive type when things really got challenging. And that's why we just had a lot of conflict that was never resolved. And a lot of issues that simply remained unresolved. We never looked back at the wreckage of our past once I made the amends to him.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can see how that all lines up. It's generational. And,
Yep.
a lot of times we fail to realize, and as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking about my own situation. And, me and my dad, we were kind of in the same boat. My dad grew up pretty much poor. And then I came along and I was, pretty much an only child. I say pretty much because I have a sister and I've only met her a couple times in my life, but my dad, he gave me everything I wanted almost to a fault, not almost, but was to a fault, but then kind of like would hold it against me too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
It
of
was
course.
like, I provided you with all this stuff and now you're an alcoholic. Look at you.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, there was that element too. Yeah. I mean, my dad, I think, felt really proud of the fact that he could help me get me educated, and help put me through law school, that I didn't have to scrounge like he did. On the other hand, I think he had a lot of jealousy and resentment that nobody ever gave him anything, and I was a very different kind of a person. I was not, that goal oriented in terms of generating cash and making money. I did have objectives, I did have goals, I did have a passion, first about practicing law and then about directing TV. The issue is, how do you break the cycle of this intergenerational trauma when dealing with my own kids? I don't want them, I don't want to, be the dad to them that my dad was to me. I'm trying not to repeat the pattern. And that's again where 12-step recovery comes in, because it's a lot about, look, I'm an addict in recovery. I'm a pothead. I'm your run of the mill, everyday wake and baker for 30 years. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until my kids started to realize that there was something, we're old enough to know that I was effed up all the time, that I really just, that's when I went into, that's when I hit my bottom. And I was in a failing marriage, and we finally got divorced. But learning how to, be patient and tolerant and accepting through recovery, contrary action, restrain a pen and tongue, count to 10, count to 20, let go and let God. Don't just do something, sit there, all these tools that I learned. I mean, I've been in recovery for 21 years. I'm still going to meetings so I can remember, because I got to get a grip on my brain. When someone pisses me off, cuts me off on the San Diego freeway, I don't do the Spock thing, live long and prosper. I do the FU. That's because I'm an addict in recovery. My first thought is FU. And I need these tools to get myself to calm down and count to 10 and get a grip on my brain before my mouth starts moving or my fingers start typing, because I don't want to say stuff that's reactionary, and I don't want to make amends to people for stuff I say without really thinking it through.
Right. Yeah. I like that. What's the as far as how many kids do you have?
I've got three kids. I have a daughter living in Boston. I got a daughter living out here in Mount Washington, Highland Park, and my son is in Highland Park. And my son is, that was the challenge. I mean, my daughter went to college, and she's now, working at Paramount Pictures, where my dad made his name with Star Trek. So that came full circle. And my son, though, he was a lot like my dad. The kid was just impossible in school. I just could not get him to do any freaking homework. And the problem was that he was, destined for rock and roll glory. He was so good on drums and guitar at an early age that his whole attitude was, what do I need eighth grade history for? What's the point? Or 10th grade English. I couldn't get that kid to do a stitch of homework. He was just like my old man, who also was not interested in school. He was interested in pursuing acting. And my dad, when I reconciled with my dad, the two of them were like, two, birds of a feather. They were just ridiculous together. They really understood each other. And now, thankfully, my kid got picked up by a small punk band out of Orange County called The Offspring. And, they're finishing up a tour in South America. He's been with them for 7 years. I mean, thankfully he figured it out. And thankfully I figured out some of the dynamic of how to work with him, because I'm trying to break this cycle and just try to be a loving parent. And again, it's about 12-step recovery.
Yeah. Well, The Offspring isn't a small band by any stretch.
Just a small punk band out of Orange County, California.
Maybe to you, but I grew up listening to them.
Oh, Tom, I turned my kid onto that band when he
Yeah.
when he was about 12 years old. I turned him on to them.
And then they picked him up.
What's that?
And then they picked him up.
They picked him up when it was about 7 years ago. He's 32 now. So about when he was 25 or 26, they needed somebody. They had an emergency, and he flew out to Rome. A mutual friend recommended him. He flew out to Rome with them. This is in 2017. So, and he's been with them ever since. And I love those guys. I mean, last year I was in Madrid and Lisbon with those guys, jumping around on stage, acting like an idiot. I'm a fanatic for that band. I love that band.
Oh, that's great.
And, yeah, and we're so lucky. But look, I'm telling you, it was touch and go for a while with that kid. I mean, he drove me nuts. I couldn't get him to do any homework.
Yeah. And so would you say that the 12-step program can you attribute a lot of your family successes, yourself and your children and just all of that How much of that could you attribute to a 12-step program?
Dude, all of it. All of
Why?
it. I mean, because I needed to really work on myself. When you start using or drinking regularly, as in an addict sort of way, you're not growing, you're not emotionally developing. And I was told early on by somebody that when I went into recovery at age 47, I was told by a woman at the 12 and 12 bookstore here in LA, where I was buying some literature. She said, I had a long conversation with her, and she said right away, listen, you've got basically the emotional development of a 17-year-old boy. And when she said that, it pissed me off. I just thought that's total bullshit. And the reason why I had that thought is because I had the emotional development of a 17-year-old boy. You're in arrested development. It's like I needed to grow up, and I just couldn't do it drinking and smoking weed all the time. And the program has really helped me, and I'm still wired that way. I still have emotional relapse. It's very unlikely I'm going to drink or use today or tomorrow. After that, who knows? It's one day at a time. But I have emotional relapse all the time. I do and say shit that's just not appropriate. And I really need the program to remember, how to act like an adult, dealing with life on life's terms. And sometimes it's freaking challenging.
Going back to that, practicing law, I mean, I can imagine that somebody that goes through practicing law and stuff like that, you got the educational component, of course, and then you go into actually practicing law. I've worked with, lawyers, doctors, pilots, all the things, but there's kind of this, and I guess my question for you, maybe when that lady was saying that you had the emotional development of a 17-year-old, that's got to be a crush to your ego, because here I am, I'm an attorney. Look at what I've done, look at what I've provided, so on and so forth. And then it like hurts your pride.
Well, yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, that's, ego deflation is a big part of my recovery. You
Yeah.
know, the sense of humility is like none of that shit matters. The fact is I'm an addict. Yeah, who cares if I'm an attorney, if I'm the greatest attorney in town? Now, who gives a shit, or even when I was directing TV, I mean, I got pretty good at it. Who gives a shit? Fact is, I'm a pothead. It caused a lot of trouble for me in my professional life and in my personal life. So, a lot of it is just about trying to be of service and trying to be helpful to others, and patience, tolerance, and acceptance, loving kindness for everybody. Look, that woman at that 12 and 12 told me a lot of stuff that I really held on to. She said to me, the people who challenge you the most in your life will give you the best opportunity for emotional development
Hmm.
and growth, and that's why we love everybody in recovery, even the people who really piss us off,
Yeah.
because it's a real challenge to deal with these people in a way that's, loving and kind, as they deserve and is required by my program of recovery. I'm also, just as an aside, I've been a board member for many years at Beit Teshuvah here in LA. It's a residential addiction treatment center. We got about 140 beds in that place. And there's a lot of young people who come through there desperately trying to kick their habit, and we lose people, with this fentanyl nightmare. We've lost a lot of people. But that, staying there and staying in the community and staying connected, see, that for us is the opposite of addiction. Is not sobriety, it's connection, it's community. It's being with these people and and being of service to these people. That's what keeps me, on the path of my emotional development, of emotional sobriety, and of just, relieving the obsession for drinking and using. So I'm just trying to be of service. Look, I was a pothead. I thought I would just be in the program for a couple of years and dry out, and then go back out there and drink and use like a gentleman. And I've
Hmm.
been modifying that plan every day for like the past 19 years. I just freaking love the program. I want a life of serenity. I want a life of spirituality. And the program gives it to me. And I'm not a big book thumper, but I am big on community and connection, and that's what I get out of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we've been doing this podcast for, I don't know, 8 years now. And I say, in my opinion, the community aspect of recovery is the most important. If we're looking at somebody that locks themselves in a room and does the 12 steps, I don't like it. You
Yeah.
got somebody that goes to a meeting every single day and pours coffee but doesn't talk to anybody, sits in the back, I don't like it. You get somebody that surrounds themselves with people all the time, that's in the middle, that maybe doesn't pour as much coffee, that may, drag their feet on the steps a little bit, but in the end, their people are people in sobriety. They got a really good shot at this.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, yeah. That is still my plan, to just stay in the middle. Go to enough meetings, do my thing at Beit Teshuva, try to help those people, and I feel like I am being of serve. Call people, check in on people who are in recovery, give my phone number to people. Share as often as I can. That's like I just keep trying to maintain that, and then I feel like, okay, I'm in the pack. I'm still in recovery. I'm still in the game. I'm still connected to that community. That's, look, I don't do it perfectly. I don't. The only thing I do perfectly is I just don't drink or use.
Right. Going to the book, I mean, it looked like a big book, right? Pretty thick.
Well, it's a few hundred pages. I don't know. Let's take a look here.
Let me see the side angle of that book.
It's about 250 pages. It's not that bad. People can get through it.
Yeah, you can get through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's in there? Is that like your life story or what?
Yeah, well, here's the deal, man. It's like before I had to deal with the resentment towards my dad, I had to deal with like my ex-wife. She's in there, and I'm
Mhm.
like tight with her now. I mean, she's like one of my best friends. But I mean, she was pushing my buttons, and I had to learn how to use my recovery tools and keeping my cool with her. And then there's my teenage daughter. Teenage daughters can turn anybody into an alcoholic or an addict. I mean, they can be so challenging, and she still is. But we have a really tight. We're really tight. And then my boy, and then my mother. I had a Jewish mother who I loved and adored, and she was, very, supportive and loving and warm and kind when I was growing up. But later on in life, she had a lot of challenges. She was a pill popper, and I had to use the tools of recovery and Al-Anon. She was one of my qualifiers, and learning how to deal with her. And I go through some of these stories of what happened with those guys, and that really was what prepared me to deal with the number one resentment that I had in my life, which was my dad. So it's my family interaction, some of the events that happened, some of the challenges of my life, and then what happened, when I had to finally reconcile with my dad. My dad sent me a 6-page letter, basically taking my inventory, all my character defects. He wanted a list. He had all of them listed out. And that's when I started using the tools of recovery. When I talk about this in the book, of not reacting, of letting him just do his thing and not responding to it. And most of my friends in recovery thought this is the way you live a life in recovery. You don't react to this shit. I don't write my own letter to him of his stuff of his character defects. But one of my friends in recovery said, no, you take the letter and you make an amends to him. This is going to be great. You're going to change your life. And that's really the focus of the book, is what happened then.
Hmm. When did you notice with your dad that not maybe from your dad's perspective, but from your perspective, that like a weight was lifted, like that it's good now?
Oh, immediately. I mean, it took a while. I mean, that's a really good question. It's like, so I was told to go make this amends to my dad for this letter he wrote me. And I was like, at first I was like, there's no freaking way I'm going to do that. I mean, he trashes me for 6 pages and I'm going to go apologize to him. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But, my friend in recovery, a guy I trusted who had more recovery time than I did, said, the amends is not for him. It's for you. It's for you to let go of your stuff with your dad, your desire to want to write him a 10-page letter of his bullshit. This is your opportunity to change your life. And I wasn't feeling it when I did. I agreed to do it. I faked it till I made it. I wasn't feeling it when I did it, but I took the direction because I trusted the guy who told me.
Mm.
So I went to make the amends to my old man, and right away he loved the whole experience. I mean, while I was apologizing to him, he was digging on it so much so that when I finished the amends, we had been estranged for a couple of years. I was barely talking to the guy. I made the amends, and when he was seeing me out the front door, he said, "Hey, why don't you come to Shabbat dinner next Friday?" And after that, everything changed. And it was, it took a little bit of time and adjustment before the weight was lifted, but it happened pretty damn quickly. And everything shifted in the family with my kids and my dad and me and my sister and my mom. Everything just shifted around, and I had a very tight relationship with my dad, and he did a number of things to help me that showed that he was willing to make a living amends to me. He never made a formal amends. Leonard Nimoy did not really say "I'm sorry" very often. Those words are very tough for those guys from that generation. But he did make a living amends to me, and I was really lucky to get that.
Yeah. You answered my next question. It was going to be how did you and your dad, fixing that stuff, how did that affect all the other relationships? But it sounds like it was pretty, I mean, and the reason I bring that up is because this isn't oftentimes an isolated issue amongst two people.
Yeah.
It affects everybody
Yeah.
indirectly in a way.
Oh, yeah. No, my dad was estranged from me, was estranged from my kids.
Yeah.
They weren't really they weren't interacting that much at all because of this problem I was having with him. But after that shifted, then they came on board, and the whole family dynamic changed, and we were all having family dinners on Friday night Shabbat at my dad's house. And my dad took me to Beit Teshuva. He's the guy who introduced me to that organization, because he had a charitable foundation and he was donating money to them, because they're a nonprofit. And he's the one who took me to my first Shabbat service over there, and I just got hooked because it was more recovery community. It was like their Friday night services are like rock and roll show. They have a band, and it's like a revival meeting, and it's a 12-step meeting because they celebrate birthdays and they welcome in, new, people who are new residents there. And it's a typical Friday night, Jewish Shabbat service. It was all
Mhm.
those things. And I never left there. My dad did that for me. And then there were other episodes that are more specifically outlined in the book of things that my dad did for me and was very helpful to me at critical points in my life. So, yeah, man, everything fucking changes. I mean, 12 step is just a miracle. Recovery is insane. It's just, so many things have happened. My higher power has just stepped in and helped me so many times when I could not freaking do anything to help myself. It's unbelievable. If you just hold on, just stay sober, stay in the middle of the pack, and the promises and the miracles start happening, all the time. That's just the way it worked for me. I'm only telling my story. I can't, whether it works for someone else, I don't know. It's a program of attraction. You just got to try it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you got to stick it out long enough. A lot of times people don't give it a fair enough shot, and they're like, "Oh, I tried that." How
Right.
many conversations have you had with people? I get, myself a ton. I'll ask them, "Have you ever been to an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting?" "Yeah, I went to one or two. It's just not my thing."
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have that. I have that also. I have this joke going with my ex-wife that she's practicing Al-Anon principles, and she's been to a couple of meetings, and she figured I got it. Okay, I went to a couple of meetings. I got it, and
Yeah.
I'm always ribbing her about that. Since she's a pro in Al-Anon. But yeah, look, it's just a big commitment, and you got to get off your ass and you got to go to meetings. That's just all there. It's just amazing what the vulnerability and what people share and what I learned and how it resonates and how I'm just grateful, for my situation. And it just gives me a lot of gratitude. I learn stuff about myself. I learn about, a lot of empathy for what other people are going through. I really get a lot out of the shares. It's just, and I'm in LA, man. It's like it's so hard to really be connected to a community here. We're all spread out all over the place. It's a huge city. So, when I go to meetings in my local area, I'm on the west side. I'm going to Santa Monica and Mar Vista and West LA. There's a lot of recovery in this town. And I want, and I'm not here for very long. I'm 68 years old. I'm not going to be around much longer. I want to, make the most of it. And this is the way to do it. This is just has worked for me for over 20 years now. And, I just can't say enough about it, man. It just saved my life.
Well, you got a great attitude. I mean, you got a lot of energy, speak well. Yeah. It's
Well, I got a lot of passion. That was Leonard's big whole deal. He's like, you got to feel passionate about what you're doing, or it's
yeah.
just, otherwise things get boring real quick. And it keeps me on my toes, and I'm aware. And if my kids need me at any hour of the day, I'm like, I'm there for them. I'm ready. I'm sober. My eyes are open. I'm open to new opportunities. Listen, I've been all over this country, promoting this book. I'm meeting people everywhere, all over the place, and it just seems to be resonating with them. And I feel like I'm just trying to carry the message, which is what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think I've had a spiritual awakening. I like to think so, and as a result of the 12 steps, I'm trying to carry the message to other alcoholics. Otherwise, you don't keep it, man. If you don't give it away, there's no way you're going to keep it. No way.
Couldn't agree with you more. Well, as far as the book goes, where can people find it?
At your local bookstore, please, people, try to support your local bookstore. Mine here in LA is the Village Well in Culver City. You can get a copy there. Otherwise, you can go online.
Amazon, of course.
Of course. Or,
Yeah.
or go to my website. I'm talking about the book. I'm doing stuff. I got a thing going tomorrow in Pasadena, and I'm going to be at a comic at WonderCon in Anaheim. I'm going out to Falls Church, Virginia. I'm going to be in Toledo, Ohio. Look at my website, adamnimoy.com. It's all on there where I'm going to be. You can contact me through the website. You can email me. Love to hear from you. Love interacting with the fans. If you've got something to say about Leonard and Spock, love to hear it. It's just been amazing. The afterglow of goodwill that was created by Leonard and Spock in Star Trek. I'm enjoying that as I go on tour. Love to hear from people.
Well, that's great. Don't hang up. I'm going to take us out and we'll connect afterwards.
Okay, cool. I'm still on.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.